Family TV is a subsidiary of FISCAL, an NGO and sister organization to NICS. Family TV's main programming objective is to propagate and rejuvenate good family life. We focus on parenting, marriage, and all other aspects of improving family relationships. FISCAL has partnered with the U.S. Embassy in Trinidad, their public affairs unit, to conduct a 4-part series on mental health. We have also received approval from the Chief Education Officer, Mrs. Lisa Henry David, for all teachers to participate in this program. She also committed this to all school supervisors, principals, vice principals, and teachers. We would like to officially say thank you to Ms. Henry David and also to Ms. Michelle Carter of the Ministry of Education, who was instrumental in having this done. At the same time, we would like to say welcome to all teachers who are joining us, parents who were also notified by the respective teachers. The first part, this program was made up of 4 parts. With this, we are on the last part now. The first part was an introduction to mental health, where we define mental health, debunk the myths, and examine the stigmas that scares people away from seeking help. The second program, Building the Foundation for a Great Family, was covered the ages 1 to 11. And then the third part, which was last week, covered the mental health issues that affect teenagers from 12 to 18. I would encourage all who did not have the opportunity to see to go and do so. It is available on Family TV, on Facebook page, and also on YouTube. If you have any problems to access, please call FISCAL at 763-2960 and talk with Wahida. Today is our 4th program, and we'll be looking at mental health issues in adults and the elderly. And when we'll get into other factors, your input via questions, comments, and even contributions are welcome. You can do so via WhatsApp using 868-763-2960 or 389-6006. You can also check our website, islamtv.org, where you will get all the information as to how to get onto the program. We have been fortunate to have different professionals on each program. Their training and experience was specific to the different areas that we dealt with. We also have a great panel of professionals for today. And I would like to first introduce my co-host, who would introduce the panel. She is a counselor and a trauma therapist and has been with NICS from its inception. She is Michelle Bayam. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Hafiz. Pleasant good evening to our viewers and panelists. As Hafiz said, I have been with FISCAL NICS for a long time, since inception, and it's always a pleasure to work on these projects where we attempt to give individuals information to improve their lives, their families, themselves. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists today. We have a very, very interesting panel, as every program. We have had, this is our 4th and final part today. So we just want to welcome our panelists and thank them for being with us down to the end. So initially, first of all, we have Ms. Suhair Kafri. Ms. Kafri is a social worker and head of the mental health program at the Adams Center in Virginia, near Washington, D.C. Ms. Kafri received her degree from George Mason University School of Social Work. She joined the Adams Center, a congregation of over 6,000 persons, in 2014 to develop the social work department. Ms. Kafri developed the Adams Wellness Center that addresses the needs of the community with their mental health care needs. She created a model that is inclusive of religious, therapeutic, and clinical care to holistically address the needs of the community. Excellent work, Ms. Kafri. Can you tell us a few words about yourself?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Yes, that was, thank you so much for introducing me. It's not until somebody starts to talk about the work that you start to recall, like, oh yeah, I went through that. So yes, thank you so much. I started with Adam Center about 7 years ago, and it's been one of the most wonderful and humbling experiences. I'm working with the Muslim community because I'm working within a mosque. And so I'm able to get to know their needed with mental health, and therefore begin to build on that so that we can begin to help everyone feel comfortable coming to us and talking about mental health.
Excellent, thank you. And from what I've heard in the brief description you gave us before, it's excellent work. The programs are great and really, really well planned.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes.
Thank
Commend you for that.
Thank
Okay,
you
so our next panelist, Mr. Swain Leo Hussein Kardogan. Mr. Kardogan is a Trinidad and Tobago citizen. Swain Leo Hussein Kardogan holds both Masters of Science and Bachelors of Science honors in forensic psychology from Teesside University, Middlesbrough, England. Mr. Hussein Kardogan is currently employed as a forensic psychologist at St. Anne's Hospital via the Northwest Regional Health Authority. He also serves as a consultant for Integro Curus Limited, a private mental health care company. His current areas of expertise include forensic psychological evaluations and behavioral risk assessment to determine likelihood of violence and criminal recidivism. Mr. Hussein Kardogan's interest in forensic psychology stemmed from a family member being murdered. Mr. Hussein Kardogan is currently in the final stages of qualifying as a field traumatologist and certified trainer, with the aim of becoming a certified traumatologist, eventually master traumatologist with the Green Cross of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Mr. Hussein Kardogan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's always weird hearing people talk about your achievements.
Yeah.
What can I say? I have served as a forensic psychologist with the NWRHA for about 7 years now, maybe a bit more. So in terms of understanding the impact of mental health, and I can say a lack of education about mental health, you see it firsthand every day, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system. So panels such as this, where we are trying to get that information out there, get the public engaged and talking more openly about mental health, bringing it out of our cultural taboo and more into the limelight now, this has long-reaching effects down the line, and hopefully can make my job in the future easier, where we're going to have more individuals engaging in proper mental health and awareness, and thereby less likely to run afoul of the law because of it.
Excellent. And we want to commend you on the work that you do. It's non-stop, right? Never ending.
It never ends. Mental health never stops.
Correct. Okay, and our final panelist for today would be Professor Edward Clark, counselor and CBT therapist. Dr. Edward Clark was born in Barbados, educated at the Universities of London, Surrey, and Oxford Brookes in England. Currently works in Trinidad as he is very committed to the academic development of the University of the Southern Caribbean, but his permanent residence is in South Africa. He is the founding and current Dean of the School of Social Science, Professor of Social Psychology at the University of the Southern Caribbean. Professor Clark is qualified in the areas of counseling, sociology, psychology, international relations, and business management. He has lived and worked in many Southern African countries, including Lesotho, where he was a senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Roma, Lesotho, Swaziland, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Angola, etc. His African experience included being a part-time research consultant for WHO, UNICEF, UNFPA, and the USAID, and enjoys being active in church. Dr. Clark has conducted many workshops in Trinidad, Barbados, Grenada, and other Caribbean countries for government and private sector on a variety of business and psychosocial areas, including change management, executive coaching, strategic planning, parenting, youth development, and gender affairs. He has undertaken significant research in the area of gender studies, absent fathers and present fathers, mental ill health, and prostate cancer. He has co-authored a chapter, Dying Too Young in the Caribbean, in Legacy of the Crossing, edited by Thomas A. Leveist. Dr. Clark is a founder member and was a co-facilitator of Leading from Above the Line program from its inception. He credits the LFATL as the catalyst for his current specialization and expertise in the area of emotional intelligence. Dr. Clark, welcome. Can you say a few words on
Good
this?
afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
When you start, I'm always hoping that you can end soon. These things happen when you live too long. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. That's right. Welcome.
Yeah, well, my biggest achievement is being a father of 3 daughters. That is my biggest achievement.
Wonderful.
And I just love being a dad. You know, that I need to put that on my CV because that is just like awesome. I just love that. That gives me more pleasure than anything else.
Wonderful. I will write it on. So next time I will write it on. So I'll read it next time.
But it gives me a pleasure to be, to be asked to be here. And I am just humbled by the requests and just to share my limited knowledge and to learn from the others. You know, sometimes when you live too long, someone thinks you know everything. I don't. I'm always learning, and I love the experience to share. You know, I was very excited to hearing about Mr. Hussein because I have a granddaughter who wants to go into forensic psychology at UWI Barbados. So I hope that, at least we might get one in the family sometime in the future. So welcome, and I'm just humbled to be here this afternoon.
Thank you for being here straight to the end.
Good.
As well. All right, so we're off to start our program now. Hafiz, anything else before we get into? I think your mic is off. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you could go ahead and start the questions.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so today we wanted to focus on that overlapping area between adults and the elderly. We know that one of the main mental disorders or situations that is happening now and always is really depression. So we want to start with that and how it presents signs and symptoms in both elderly and adults. And also if we can get a little bit into that discussion about how is it picked up, especially in the elderly, since I know from my personal experience, it's often missed with the elderly. So if we could start with some of the signs and symptoms and let's roll through. And of course, as we go along, everybody's contribution is welcome. So we can start with Leo. Mr. Kardogan, would you like to begin?
Not a problem. So one of the interesting things is that in terms of the symptoms of depression, they tend to be the same for all ages across the board. But there are some minor differences in our ability to pick up those signs and symptoms. And I know we would have touched on it before when we did some of the mental health issues in children and teens, depression being one of those things that is lifelong. There is no cutoff age for who can experience it. So just to touch on the definition once more, it is a constant and persistent, intense feeling of sadness or this sense of hopelessness and despair, and it lasts for extended periods of time. This is much different from your normal moody blues, as we say. You know, everybody gets down every now and again, but with depression, this is long lasting, and you're experiencing those feelings for most of the day, almost every day, for at least 2 weeks straight or longer, right? And this becomes a problem when it causes impairment to our day-to-day activities, our work, our social lives, our ability to engage in extracurricular activities, school, even our relationships with one another, all starts to get affected. Right? So just to go over a couple of the symptoms over a period of 2 weeks or longer, for most of the day, nearly every day, they can feel a combination of 5 or more of the following. So you get the feelings of sadness, tearfulness, sometimes even feelings of emptiness and hopelessness. But it's not always just sadness. You also get anger, irritability. They may have angry outbursts for no apparent reason. It's completely unprovoked. Right? There's a loss of interest in activities that they once enjoyed doing, things that they found pleasurable. Even their normal activities, you'll find that decreases over time. Sleep disturbances, most importantly, and this isn't just not being able to sleep, it also means sleeping too much, or you may not sleep restfully through the night, tossing and turning all the time. And of course, that leads to tiredness and a lack of energy, right? Changes to appetite. Sometimes it's a reduction. They eat a lot less, they're not hungry, and that in turn causes weight loss. You have others who go the opposite end of the spectrum. They eat their feelings. They try to fill that emptiness with food, and they eat a lot and they gain weight quite rapidly. Right? There's also that anxiety, that worry with no apparent reason, everything always triggering that sense of dread and doom. Their thinking slows down, their speaking slows down, even their body movements can slow down. Some people feel a sense of worthlessness. I'm not worth anything. My life isn't worth anything. I'm not serving any purpose here on earth. And that comes with guilt, and they fixate on the things that went wrong in the past and the failures that they might have had. They start blaming themselves for things that may have gone wrong within their family, within their life, within their jobs, all of it. And with that also comes problems with concentration. They can't, as we say, their thought processes are slowing down. So the ability to focus on the task at hand, make decisions, even remembering things, all starts to get affected. All right. Now, as I say, the symptoms are usually the same across the board for all ages, but particularly in the elderly, what tends to happen for the elderly who live alone still, they may not be as socially active as before, especially as you know, as the good doctor said, when you live so long and many of your good associates and friends pass on, there are less people to check on you, so that the signs and symptoms of depression, there may not be people around to notice it. All right. A lot of the times the elderly don't realize the physical changes that come with depression, that tiredness, that lethargy, that inability to think as quickly, because these are also considered part of the normal signs of aging. You're going to slow down, you're not going to be able to do things as quickly as before. Your body is going to have aches and pains that it didn't have before. So a lot of the times they just rack this up to the normal signs and symptoms of aging. There's also the fact that with the elderly, it's not always just that sense of sadness. Sometimes it's the tiredness, sometimes it's the sleep disturbances. And in many instances, they may think, okay, well, I'm taking this particular medication, or, I've had to have this change in diet. So maybe that's what's causing these feelings. And they always think it's related to something else. So it's very easy to miss those signs and symptoms among the elderly. There is that anecdotal belief that, you know, as you age, you always get a little grumpy. So the angry outbursts from your elderly neighbors or your family members, you may just chalk that up to they're getting old. It may actually be one of the signs and symptoms of depression. And even the elderly themselves, they don't always like to talk about their feelings. Because as we mentioned, there's this sense of worthlessness. Nobody's interested in what I have to say, so I'll just keep it to myself. We also have the cultural norm that, you know, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't complain too much because people aren't going to want to be around you. So we suck it up and we stay quiet about it. We suffer in silence, unfortunately. And for many of the elderly in our population, more so now with the current pandemic, there is that disconnect, that further disconnect, I should say. So socialization takes a back seat. They're not as up to date with the technology sometimes. So the video calling, the phone calling, it may lapse. And so they can't reach out, they can't connect. That is going to further exacerbate their signs of depression. I think I've covered most of it. Have I missed anything else?
You've been
I don't think you have.
yeah, it was quite thorough, correct.
That was very thorough. The only
Yeah.
thing I
Trying
would
to
like to
keep it
add to
succinct.
the only thing I would like to add to that is that and this is something I've observed because I have a 96-year-old mother, and one of the things that I observe is that they believe that nobody understands them, right?
Yes.
They're not understood, and when they're not understood, it makes them feel very, very sad, and they cry for the slightest thing. They will become tearful about, and then it trips you out. It puts you in a feeling of guilt. You say, "Well, Mom, what are you crying about?" And then she would say, "You know, you all don't understand me, and so, you know I'm old now, and so there's that feeling of as but Hussein noted, separateness, like I am receding and I am not really able to interact with you all anymore. And it's really easy to not forget about them, but to be so caught up in our own activities that we leave them and we think, because that's what we have always done. We have always have our parents out there who are the ones who are able to manage, and now they're dependent on us, and it requires a considerable amount of patience, a lot of patience with the elderly, because they are slower, they're slower in thinking, they're slower in movement. You can't understand okay, just lift your foot, just or something. I mean, we just have to be so careful, because they get upset about slight things. And I find that I have a brother who looks after my mom. Oh, the Lord bless his heart. He is incredibly good. There's no way I could even match him in my wildest dreams, because the patience and the tolerance, and it is amazing. And so they are always in between, feeling not understood, not as you can give them as much love. They don't think that you love them enough, and then you get the fact that you're ungrateful for what I've done in the past. Get all of that thrown at you. So
the guilt trip is coming.
So you have to be very patient with the elderly, and just and empathize with what they're going through. It's not an easy road for them. And therefore, as children, as caregivers, we have to be very patient. Yeah.
So what I would like to
doesn't always come easily. We live in a very fast-paced world, so that need to slow down and go at their pace is extremely difficult.
Yes.
But we have a local saying: "Once a man, twice a child."
Yeah.
It is so difficult. Even I myself get caught up in it with my own parents, who are still quite active, quite healthy.
Yeah.
But you know, the understanding of things, the needs for explanations, it comes constantly, and having to remember to step back and take that time to slow down. Okay, I may have to explain the same thing 4 or 5 times, and then I'll have to do it again tomorrow. And having the patience to accept that you now have to do this, it's not always easy. But I do have the benefit of having old videos and pictures of myself as a child when they did the exact same. So that puts it in perspective. Okay, my turn now.
And just finally, one other thing is just that it's really difficult because for us, because you know we are reminded that we need to honor our parents, we need to honor them, and we need to treat them, you know, with the utmost dignity. So it is really a challenge for us living and moving ahead and with our careers and all that, and having to, you know, remember that this person or these persons were responsible for my upbringing, and you know, and had not for them, I wouldn't be here. That's something that we have to just put into our heads and work with that on a continuing basis.
I just want to I would just like to add, Michelle, that touching on what Leo just said about once a man, twice a child. You know, in the Quran, it actually says, it gives you come from a sperm, then he makes you into a child, he makes you into an adult, and then you get back to not knowing anything. He said, he also adds that some die, and then some stay on longer and reach to the stage where they don't know anything. And there's an actual passage from the Quran.
Right, excellent. What I would like to ask though, so having said all of this, are they then depressed, or are they reacting to the change, our change? So for example, you know, as our pace quickens and their pace slows down, it becomes about instructions. It becomes about doing it quick so that I could move on to do other things. It becomes about do as I say so everything could run smoothly. And then you see the changes in them. So are they depressed, or are they reacting to us? So if we, like as Dr. Clark was pointing out, his brother is so patient. Let's say we change the caregiver. Is that, and then their mood changes, is that a reaction to us? So therefore the environment can lift them and provide a solution? Or is that depression that needs to be addressed as a mental situation, a mental health situation? Can anybody guide us along those lines?
Well, I'll give Sister Kafea an opportunity to speak first.
Sister Caffrey, you were called upon.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's so funny because, well, both of my parents, God rest their soul, are passed. They passed very young at 60. So I didn't get a chance to see them progress into old age. But it was really funny because my mother and I both were struggling with sciatica at different ages. We had the same condition and it was affecting both of us. She was affected, feeling so immobilized. And I was the same thing, like, oh, this does hurt. And I can understand, you know, that you have these issues along with the sciatica. I can't imagine just dealing with the sciatica and feeling a little, you know, not able to move as quickly as possible. As Hafiz was saying, it's written in the Quran for us to lower the wing of humility and take care of our parents. It's expected of us as Muslims. So with our community, it is we have many intergenerational households. So the grandparents, the parents, and the grandchildren, everyone lives in one home. And so if there's anything that happens with depression within the home, you have people around you, most likely You have people around you that are there to help, to kind of stay around you and to guide, to keep you busy and focused on other things. So the person is not just sitting, the elderly is not just sitting within themselves and just feeling depressed and alone. And may God bless Dr. Clark's brother. I completely understand, you know, being there and helping the mother and everything, because so many people in our community do that. We have programs at our mosque that are for the seniors. They get together on Fridays, which is the holy day. They have breakfast together. They can go out to the back in the greenery and set up picnic tables and have breakfast together. So this socialization part is happening with us because we've recognized it, and because of the religious obligation to our elders, it is, you know, we must ensure that this is in our mosque, in our services, and not lacking in any sense. For example, in the prayer area, we set up chairs for those that cannot stand and prostrate and get up and sit down and do all of the motions of the Islamic prayer. So we make sure we guide them in, we sit them down, we make sure they have a seat up front so they can listen to the sermon being given by our imam. And so we do try to incorporate a lot of the services, a lot of our lives, a lot of our home lives and lives outside of the home to suit the needs of our elderly. I hope I've answered the question. Did I miss anything there?
No, we appreciate your contribution. And of course, you're always very practical in terms of sharing with us things that you've done. So thanks for that. Dr. Clark, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that the question you posed is a very interesting one, because what we describe gets really difficult if that person is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. It just kind of like, you know, it adds to the level of difficulty in managing them. The other thing that was really interesting is that if one has a system of caring that was just noted by Sister Kafri, where you integrate them into your life, it can mediate the feelings of loneliness, of rejection, of separateness. And therefore, that can help them to function better because they feel that they're included, they're not excluded, you know, they're still part of our life. Because here in the Caribbean, we don't have the same, and I said with inverted commas, we don't have the same reverence for the elderly like they do in Asia, where, you know, elderly are respected. And so we respect them, but not to that extent. And so we can add to the mental challenges that the elderly experience if we push them away, if we are not accommodating, if we are not patient, if we are not, you know, we don't include them into our activities, then they're likely to feel worse. They'll feel more rejected, more lonely, and that could, you know, make the feeling of depression worse. But I think that we can mediate that if we become more inclusive. You know, when we're going out for a picnic, take mommy or granny. Don't leave her at home because you're thinking, well, what's she's going to do at the beach? I mean, you know, and just take her along. And I always, my mom used to say, well, listen, take me out for some fresh air, for drive, you know. And you're like, okay, well, you know, it means that everything has to go slower. We have to, time has to be different, you know, everything has to be accommodating of her. But if we said, well, we're not going for long, as a way of just not letting her come so that we can get on with our business, so that she doesn't feel rejected. So it's really important that we engage in activities that make them feel accepted And that goes a long way in helping them to feel better about themselves, and they don't feel, because it's the loneliness and the rejection that makes the depressive state worse. But of course, it can get really complicated if they're dementia, if they're demented, or they have Alzheimer's. Then that's a different set of areas, that conditions that really require special treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. So from here, we can go either into some of those other conditions you mentioned, which would be like dementia, Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's, and we just want to stick to the common ones, yeah? Or we could look at the question of whether should that adult have existing mental health issues during adulthood? What happens when they become elderly? Does it change? Does it become more prominent? What happens if that is the case? So let's say it's not just about the conditions and the treatment and the inclusion. If they had a mental health illness or condition before that wasn't showing up that much, what happens when they become elderly? Does it exaggerate? Does it change? Do we now say that they've just developed this?
So in terms of understanding it, I think understanding what dementia and Alzheimer's entails and where depression comes into that is necessary. So the term dementia, we use it a lot, but there's always some confusion as to what exactly it is. It's an umbrella term that is used to describe the myriad of symptoms that comes with cognitive decline as we age and our thinking slows, forgetfulness sets in. These are things that we take as normal signs of aging. And yes, you are going to get some slowdown and some memory lapses, but dementia in and of itself is a symptom of a brain disease, a brain disorder. And so it's not a normal part of aging. It's not something that we are all going to encounter or go through.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's important to know. Yeah.
Say again?
I said yes, and that's important to note.
So you're going to get with dementia, the memory loss, the difficulty in completing your normal day-to-day tasks, things that you've done all your life, like making a sandwich. And because of this condition, you start the process and just freeze because you forget the next steps. You start getting problems with communicating, and that comes back to that statement of not being understood. They may be aware of what they're feeling, they may be aware of what they want, but the words to communicate that is no longer there. The structure of a sentence is no longer there. And then there's the disorientation, getting confused, that loss of sense of direction, because we always hear about it. We see about it on social media and the news. This person wandered out of the family home and now they're looking for them. Mood changes automatically come with dementia. And as we mentioned in depression, that happens as well. You get these changes in moods that seem unprovoked. And this is made worse when the person has dementia. Right? Even their core personality changes. So you would have had granny or grandpa was usually a very loving, open, friendly person. And as this condition progresses, they start becoming withdrawn, they start becoming mean. They're no longer the fun person you remember being around, and they themselves have no idea why it is happening or how to really come to terms with it or deal with it. Now, when it comes to Alzheimer's is a form of depression, of dementia, sorry. Not depression. And I think this one is triggered, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, Professor. There's a buildup of plaque between the structures of the brain, the neurons, the space between the nerves. And as this plaque builds up, it starts to cause the brain to shrink, essentially, in layman terms. And that starts causing us a whole host of problems. It starts in the area of the brain that is responsible for our ability to learn new behaviors and our ability to remember things. So that's why Alzheimer's seems like a separate beast entirely. The memory lapses are much more apparent with this particular form of dementia. But the changes in the brain start happening long before we start noticing those signs. And the unfortunate thing is that this is irreversible. Once it starts, you can probably slow it down with various medications, but there is no stopping it. And sometimes getting that diagnosis, understanding this is what's going to happen to you and we can't stop it, it forces somebody to face their own mortality. And you can get trapped in a cycle of, this is happening, I have no control of it, I can't stop it, this is the end of me. And that spirals them deeper into depression a lot of the times. So you have now, there's the age gap, there's my body is slowing down, my mind is slowing down, nothing can be done, and they start into this spiral of depression. It can be pretty devastating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody, can I put it out to any one of the panelists to add or comment?
Well, as Brother Hussein noted, it's the most common form of dementia, and it's noted that it really accounts for about, I think, roughly between 60 to 80% of dementia cases. It's the interesting thing about what recent thing is that you have this pre-senile dementia, where there's a certain age that one is supposed to have these manifestations. But what we have noticed is that some individuals in their early 60s manifest these symptoms that we call it pre-senile dementia, because they're not at an age where senility should be present, but somehow the cells in the brains have just started to degenerate, and they have lost cognition, they have lost functionality, communication. And it's interesting that in Trinidad, we have very few centers to relieve that. I know of a very good friend of mine whose husband has this condition, but family members have to go to work. He's home, there's no place that you can, they have at least there's about two, but they're quite far to take him there and pick him up, and it costs a lot of money, and most people aren't financially able to provide that service in the private sector. So I find that lots of individuals struggle with that, and they don't get the kind of stimulation that is required, even when they're in that state. And you can still, you can still assist them, but you can't, because there are not enough facilities that cater for that. Because you need to change their diet and all those kind of things that go with it. One of my brothers has some facility in South Carolina that assists individuals, but it's not developed to the same extent here. There's just a few places that are available, and they're private, so it can be very costly. but it's something that we need to really, because more and more persons are beginning to present with that condition.
And the more we talk, I'm hearing so much emphasis on the social and infrastructural factors when it comes to approaching and managing and even preventing in some cases. So maybe when we come on to prevention, we can get some more into this discussion. Any other contributions, Hafiz? Somebody was going to talk, sorry.
Actually, I was going to ask a question on what kind of preventative action that one could take to deal with that, because as Leo said, once it starts, it's degenerative and there's no stopping. So if persons know what preventative measures could be taken, and we're talking about mental health, which means prevention is a key factor of the whole process. So it might be worthwhile on this particular issue to probably deal with some level of preventative issues, and then what advice should be given to those around the elderly and has to deal with them. We know one that came across clearly was patience. And some that sometimes not so easy forthcoming. I have a good friend here who his mother is gone. They just have to take her. She's like a vegetable. So her mind is gone, but she is healthy. So it's a tough thing. And a lot of times we don't really think about it until we get into it. And therefore, if we know, and I don't know what level of hereditary issues are involved in that kind of thing. And if we know, I know a lot of people talk about taking coconut oil and those kind of things. Are there really issues or things that we could use while we are younger to help that situation?
Well, I believe that keeping an active mind is really one of the proactive measures that we can all take. You know, it is often the case that when we go into retirement, we retire, we just stop. We stop doing the things that we normally would do that we get pleasure from, going out and camping or hiking or whatever it is. We just stop. We just become couch potatoes, But if you can go and do gardening, you can continue to read stimulating things. If you can keep stimulating your brain, then you can push back the onset to some extent. Just like you talked about coconut oil, but coconut oil is a short-term intervention. It's an intervention that has short-term benefits, but it is still something to have one functioning better than without it. So I think that we need to remain mentally active. That's one thing that we can do. We need to have a positive outlook on life. We need, stimulating energetic activity. These are things that we can do, with practically no cost. But very often we become feelings of hopelessness. We look at the future with doom and gloom. That is compounded by the fact that we think we don't have any purpose living. We don't have any purposeful engagement. We're not engaged in we're not exercising our body and our minds, and the process speeds up, and we become, we experience the onset much sooner. So I would say that one of the things that we can proactively do is to keep our mind active and not just and to stay positive, stay in the positive, not allow negative thinking and to view life as finished and there's no future. And we need to stay away from the negative. It's amazing what positive thinking can do to our emotional and mental health. It's tremendously positive. So that's one of the things that I would say to anyone who is retired and now want to put their feet up. And I think you should still keep engaging yourself with meaningful discourse and mental stimulation.
But is lack of proper retirement planning part of the problem? Because I don't think that we have a culture of that. We work and then one day we just retire.
Yeah.
And then we don't start to think what we're going to do.
Yes.
And there is nothing.
Yes.
And that is part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I think developing culture is one of the areas that we need to start developing positive culture. Generally as a society, which will help us in those directions. And as this program is geared to do, is to build awareness. So there are so many areas that there is no awareness of, and that is causing unnecessary problems within the society and individuals also. So we hope that this discussion will help a lot of people in starting to think, even those who are probably 50, starting to think about what happens after, in terms of, and sometimes even just getting together with your old partners and we'll talk about all kinds of things, what's happening in the society, about whatever you used to do. Those simple things help keep the mind active.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what about Parkinson's now? So we looked at dementia straight into Alzheimer's. What about Parkinson's? How does that fit into all of this for the elderly, into the elderly situation? Is Leo still on? Yeah, do we have any, do we see any comparatives in terms of?
Michelle, may I say something back about the Alzheimer's and the dementia?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Actually, we had this happen in our family, and I'm just going to honor my grandfather today because he went through that, and today's his birthday. God rest his soul. He passed away about 4 years ago. But we witnessed this progression of the Alzheimer's. And as the Quran says, for us to have mercy upon them as they raised me when I was small and lower the wing of humility. So we begin to try to work with that, the belief, and then how to take care of them in the home. And when we realize that there needs to be more safety precautions at home because we ourselves cannot do it, then we call people into the home to manage, be a health caregiver, come a few times, during the week. Because on top of everything that they're going through mentally, there's also the overprescription of prescription drugs that we see happening here. So you're always going to see an elderly person when you walk into their home here. They always have a big bowl of medications. You don't know what's going on. And there's how do you distribute this medication to them? And what is this for? What does this interact with? So we have this issue that we're dealing with. And then when that can't be managed, although we're intergenerational households, we end up moving them to a safer location, which is one of the centers that Dr. Clark was speaking about earlier. And the way that we, thankfully, we had a great experience with the center that we eventually had to move our family member to, because they allowed us to bring the home decor and decorate the room that he was staying in with it. So it was pictures of family members, favorite blankets, music, a radio, anything, baseball caps that my grandfather wore. And so I remember as the progression was going and going further and further, I went to visit one day and I just used my phone and I played one of the Middle Eastern classical music that he used to play on we say oud, it's the musical instrument. And he motioned to me, he remembered, and he motioned to me that I play this instrument. I said, yes. And he pointed to my grandmother's picture that was hanging on the wall. And he just looked at it for a few minutes. And then he pointed to his heart. And I said, yes, you love her. You love her, yes. And so that was, it showed me that have these support, even the decor in the room could be a support for them, because it just triggers some memories sometimes, even if you feel that the memory has so declined. It's just, you just see these little lights of hope come up, Another thing that was mentioned was then what happens to the people around them. So right now, what we're working on is a caregiver support group, because the caregivers in the home need their own support group, because they're going through so much while they're watching this. It's like almost like secondary trauma that is happening to them. So it causes them a lot of sadness and hopelessness as they see their loved one decline. So that's something that's really big that we're trying to work on with us, is a caregiver support group. So thank you for letting me go back to the subject.
Sure, that's excellent points.
Thank you so much.
Point. Yeah, so shall we look at Parkinson's, and then, because what's evolving as we discussed, we talked about the social and infrastructural, and we have a long way to go in terms of intentionally putting things in place. Then we talked about keeping the mind sharp. I'm eager to get to emotional resilience in terms of how does that fit in as a preventative factor, or maybe the lack thereof as a risk factor. But I just wanted to go through the signs and symptoms of Parkinson's, and then we'll get into a sort of broader discussion now in terms of where it's evolving, what's happening, what are we hearing as we talk about this. So shall we just go through Parkinson's and then get into that discussion? More family, more what can we do? How can we intervene? How can we help?
Right. So by no means an expert when it comes to Parkinson's, and feel free to correct me, anybody who knows a little bit more about it. To my knowledge and understanding, as with the others, yes, it is a brain disorder. But with Parkinson's, the area of the brain that's affected is the area of the brain that controls motor function, movement. And I believe it's due to malfunction in the body's ability to produce dopamine, the neurotransmitter dopamine that helps your nerves communicate with each other. So it is somewhat different from dementia and Alzheimer's. However, there is some research where they're finding a particular type of protein in the brains of those who have Parkinson's. It's pretty similar to something called Lewy's body disease. Lewy body. Let me have that one wrong. Yeah, Lewy body dementia. But its pathway is a little bit different. Physically, they may start losing control of the body, and this gets to extreme situations where even simple things like the ability to breathe, the body can no longer do that on its own. But mentally, they may remain quite sharp, so that there may not be the kind of decline in brain activity that we see with dementia and Alzheimer's, even though there is some slight overlap. Nonetheless, you are going to get mental health issues like the sleep disturbances are going to come, the depression is going to come. And as we've discussed many times before, once you start having that disruption in sleep, that opens the doorway to a host of other psychological and psychiatric ailments that could arise. So they may not be a direct result of Parkinson's, but Parkinson's can lead to the development of other issues like anxiety and depression and all these other areas that we've touched on in the past episodes.
Past episodes, yes.
I just want to say that, as Brother Hussein noted, you know, it's when there's a degeneration of the cells in the nervous system. But many years ago, I remember that psychiatrists had a penchant for prescribing Largactil, which is chlorpromazine, and they used to give it out quite liberally, and without, you know.
Am I frozen?
A mild glitch there.
Yeah, Dr. Clark, did we drop him? Did we lose him?
I may have just gotten a disconnect.
He's on. Dr. Clark, can you hear us? I think you froze.
You may have been disconnected.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Yes,
I think
yeah.
I think Muhammad Ali made Parkinson's a lot more known by his mere presence in the public space. So that, I think a lot of people would have learned from that situation. And as Leo said, although he had did not have control of his movements, he certainly was still sharp. So I think that one is, I mean, I think Muhammad Ali didn't make a lot of people more aware of Parkinson and what it is about. So I don't think there's so much of a lack of knowledge of Parkinson than as it is for dementia.
I think that very sort of difference between having the mental capacity intact, but you look as if, you know, you don't.
Yeah.
So the treatment, it affects how people treat you. You know, they start talking louder as well, you know, hello, you know, because you don't look like you're in charge of your mental faculty.
Yeah.
And I think that is so frustrating with Parkinson's in particular, because, you know, when you do hear what they're saying, it's such good quality, you know. So it's like a living contradiction, and that they face every day between, you know, being perceived as declining, but still having that sharpness there. Yeah.
It's a classic example of the mind is willing, but the body isn't able.
Yeah.
Yeah, which brings on the point that Dr. Clark was making in terms of you're left behind because you're assumed, you know, to not be able to cope or to understand. And, you know, it's very frustrating to be sharp and seeing that you're being left behind, you know, and feeling the impact of that. Yeah, a lot of leads to depression and anxiety. Okay, so as we look at this, so we looked at the main mental health issues to deal with the elderly. We did depression, that merged the two. What about other personality type disorders that can also start in adulthood and go to elderly, but it really impacts relationships? So we're looking at things like narcissism or borderline personality, you know, stuff like that. Can we say something about that because I want to wait for Dr. Clark. Hopefully he gets back on and to talk a little bit about that resilience part, because it's going to tie back in again. Resilience ties into everything, I can assure. But yeah, so what about a little chat about the personality disorders? Because, you know, we assume that you see it in adulthood and it vanishes when they become elderly. It doesn't, does it? No, it does not.
Unfortunately, no. And anytime you're talking about personality disorder, our personalities are shaped from childhood till the point of death. So a personality disorder, you're probably getting a diagnosis for it in adulthood. With most disorders, you cannot diagnose until the age of 18 or older. Because we have that understanding that as children and teens, our personalities aren't fixed. It's very fluid and it's still being shaped. So to diagnose somebody with a personality disorder at 16, 15, it'd be doing them an injustice. They have not actually solidified their personality. And so you get the diagnosis within adulthood. And unlike other aspects of mental health, where you have psychiatric disorders, with treatment, symptoms will go away, a person can stabilize, normalize until they relapse. With personality disorders, this is the core functioning of an individual. With treatment, with therapy, you can help enable a change in their outlook on the world. But the majority of the time, a lot of the core aspects of personality, unfortunately, remain. And for the most part, it's not necessarily problematic to the point where they're going to, you know, upheave the world, so to speak. But it, as you say, it does affect relationships. So when we're looking at like borderline personality, with borderlines, their personalities are very disruptive. It's very unstable. They have a lot of unstable relationships. They are characterized by this very clingy type of behavior. They cling to those around them. They have these unhealthy, almost destructive attachments to other individuals. And their emotions tend to be all over the place. Today they're good, 5 minutes from now they're angry with you, 10 minutes after that they're begging you don't leave them. It's, for somebody on the receiving end, it's very tiring to have to deal with somebody who has that personality disorder. Because they're always looking to the other people in their life to fill that need for dependence. I need you to do this for me. I need you to take care of me. You need to always give me attention, be there for me. And they're so preoccupied with getting this emotional support that if they think they're going to lose it, they're likely to react in a volatile manner. So you get a lot of suicidal threats, suicidal ideation, not necessarily because they intend to harm themselves, but this is the reaction of preventing somebody from leaving their lives.
And the borderline are the game players, right? They are the ones who try to get their needs filled with the game playing. So the three roles of the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim, they play those roles, right? So it means, let's say that person goes into elderly. I think what we assume is that the young and vibrant, play these games. But when we look at, if you are borderline and you're going into elderly with that, those same strategies will remain. So, for example, as Dr. Clark will, go ahead.
As you say, because of that game playing, what you tend to find now is as they age, they realize, okay, I am older. That means I have health needs and concerns. So people need to take care of me now. And you tend to find they're always sick. They always need to go to the hospital. They're always having a heart attack or near
Yeah,
heart
the
attack.
heart clutches. I was just gonna say that.
You
The
disagree
heart
with them, and
clutches.
immediately they clutch for the heart. You're killing me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And of course, the impact is that the support system, the family members get so fed up with the games that then the neglect comes on, which brings us right back to the situation where, you know, that attention, less attention is paid and so on. Yes,
One of
and
the
then we
interesting
have
things.
narcissism. Welcome back, Dr. Clark. Yeah,
Welcome back, Dr. Clark. Yeah. Now,
yeah.
one of the interesting things with the borderline in old age, as we say, unlike the wider elderly population, where you find that they may have that isolation and disconnect, the borderlines will seek out the attention. They'll call the neighbor, they will talk to the mailman, they will call KFC and have it delivered so they can tell the driver about how much they're dying.
That's right. And how they're neglected. And these are the ones who embarrass the
Yes.
families.
Oh
You're
yes.
always
Oh yes.
making a shame. You're always doing these things to embarrass us. Yeah. And that all of that is part of the same tactics that were present in the relationships in adulthood and early. Yeah. So tell us about, so
Surprisingly,
Dr. Clark is, yes.
yeah. Yes, Dr.
What
Clark.
about the narcissism now? That doesn't go away either.
No.
Right. How does that present? It's 4:11. Our time goes so quickly, but we just wanted to cover this because we want to get to that question.
Right.
What advice do we give? Yeah, in terms of
So,
spotting this early and what can we do?
in a nutshell, the narcissists, they have this constant need for admiration, must be the center of attention at all times, all eyes on me, always. They practically lack empathy. They can't put themselves in anybody else's shoes because they must always be the center of attention. So it's all about them. It's all about furthering their goals, their needs, feeding their ego, and catering to their whims and fancies. A lot of the times they have an overinflated ego. They believe that their skills are much better than what they can actually do. Right? They see themselves as special. The entire world owes them favors, all these sorts of things. And they're very exploitive people.
Yeah.
Exploitative,
Yeah.
sorry.
Exploitative, yes, correct.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, there's no room for the other
No.
party in the relationship because what you just described takes up the whole show. It takes up the whole stage.
Yes.
Mhm.
Whether
So
it be a
if we
friendship or a romantic relationship, it is about somebody to basically put them on a pedestal at all times.
Yeah, correct. Okay. All right, good. So what can we say to those who enter in relationships, maybe faced with this? They don't know what they're seeing. Is everybody confused? Welcome back, Dr. Clark. We understand electricity went, but you're back with us to finish off. That we appreciate that a whole lot.
I think
Yes.
in terms of relationships with narcissists, it's going to be something that is relatively easy to spot early on. But as human beings, we have this thing where we go into the honeymoon phase of a new relationship where the other person can do no wrong. We won't see any of the red flags until it's way too late. But with the narcissist, your friends and family members are usually going to pick up on it almost immediately. Something's not right here. This person doesn't seem to care about you. You know, a celebration of your birthday, they'll find a way to turn that into a celebration about themselves. If it is that I must be the one to give you the biggest, grandest present, you must open mine first, forget about everybody else's. There are always those red flags. And when it comes to communication, it's really hard to tell people, you know, sometimes you need to take stock of what friends and family are seeing from the outside. we have this notion again that, you know, everybody wants to destroy something good that we are building. Not always the case, you know, especially if
And
your
you're too
grandparents don't like them.
judgmental. You need
That's a
to give
red
them
flag
a
right
chance.
there.
You're so judgmental. Yeah.
Yes. With the borderline, it's a little more difficult to spot in the early stages of the relationship because, again, in that honeymoon phase, they have a lot of motivation to present the right image of themselves to keep that person near. It's not until things start going wrong in the relationship and they become fearful that you may leave them, that's when you're going to see that personality step out and start to show itself. And that can be really difficult to deal with because you're looking at situations in which sometimes you may have female borderlines who will outright fake a pregnancy to keep their male partners from leaving. You have male borderlines who their go-to is always, if you leave me, I'll kill myself. That's usually a pretty common approach that they like to take. There are those who engage in what we call gaslighting. So they attempt to break you down to convince you that no one else will want to be with you. So, you know, you're better off staying with me. And it's not about nobody wanting you. It's about they need you to stay with them. So they will always have somebody to take care of them.
Yeah. One of the important things to note, I don't know, so if you have anything to contribute, I think Dr. Clark fell off again. I'm not sure. But if he comes back on as soon as he does, because this leads straight into that emotional resilience issue discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I just add, with the state of domestic violence that we have in Trinidad, and even to the extent of the amount of women being killed in situations, I think this point needs to be made, particularly to the younger people, that they need to understand that this is something that they need to look out for in cultivating any relationship. Don't wait for it to get to that position. We know that love is blind. You fall in love with somebody, you don't see anything wrong. But make it as part of your criteria in determining who you're going to get into a relationship with. Because it is a pandemic really that we have in terms of domestic violence. And that is created by a lot of time mental health issues. And therefore, because of the lack of awareness, all these persons with those different disorders would have gotten through because the other party didn't know. Simple anger management situation, which might be a symptom of other issues, one needs to take into consideration. I remember ages ago, my wife used to work with a girl, and she was still going around with this guy, and he used to hit her, and he used to be angry all the time. And they spoke to her about it, and she ended up getting married to him. Still. So when it reaches the stage where you're actually into a relationship already, it is difficult to get out because, as Leo pointed out, these people have designed strategies that they use to keep you in the relationship, even to the extent of threatening. And therefore, I think we need to make it clear that women in particular needs to make it a criteria to look for those things before they get into any serious relationships. Leo, what you would say to that?
I would say it's across the board for both men and women. We have a notion that domestic violence is a situation where all perpetrators are male and all victims are female, and that it couldn't be further from the truth. It is not always the case that domestic violence is the result of a mental health issue per se, but yes, anger management and poor anger management skills, poor stress coping skills, these are at the forefront of some of the reasons why it is easy to go down that slippery slope. But you have instances where, as I say, men entering into relationships with borderline and narcissistic females are subjected to unimaginable amounts of emotional and psychological abuse. They may never have a physical bruise to show for it, but you interact with them and realize there is no self-esteem, no self of identity, because it's been stripped down and stripped away. And so I would say across the board, both men and women need to be willing to communicate, be willing to talk. We don't like to talk about our feelings. We don't like to talk about our goals. Even being on the same page for something in terms of, hey, how many children do you want to have? Opening the doorway to have that discussion and just communicate effectively with each other goes a long way into seeing and pinpointing the red flags.
And sometimes the whole question of premarital counseling should be the way to go. That you should go through that, because at that point in time, there's only the third party will really be able to see, because you are blinded by your attraction to the other party. And therefore, the premarital counseling should be really something that young people should get involved in, with the intention of giving the opportunity to the third party to really see the personality conflicts within the relationship.
Yes.
Definitely. I see Dr.
Yep.
Clark is back. And this
Yes.
obviously.
Sorry, I need to turn off. Sorry, I need to turn off my video, because if I put my video on, it just drops the bandwidth. So I will just do with the audio.
Okay,
so
and we're happy to have you back. So this leads straight into resilience. Yeah. So can you comment as well as share?
Just remind me what we are talking about. I know we were talking about personality disorder, and I heard Mr. Khan was talking about the fact that ladies get into these relationships and unwittingly, so to speak, and don't look out for the signs and symptoms of these different. The issue around personality is, and we need to distinguish between personality disorders and behavioral patterns, because there are individuals who demonstrate behaviors which might not be acceptable, because I mean they might have a history of bullying or excessive abuse by a parent or something, and they manifest rather antisocial behavioral issue about control and order, which is a different condition, because now you're talking about dysfunctions in their thinking and their behaviors. Most of us every day, we are not equipped cognitively to differentiate between these various disorders as such. We look at an individual, we see them behaving strangely, and we tend to say to ourselves, oh, well, once we get together, things will improve, things will get better. This is, and the interesting thing is that invariably you're living on your own and he's living on his own. So you don't get to see the full gamut of his behavior. You're only seeing whatever he presents to you when you're together. And what we do, human beings, we always present the best of ourselves to the other person. So, okay, occasionally it might leak out that we are really impatient or we are very controlling. you know, but so you get into the relationship full of promise and circumstance, and then you have to deal with this person on a daily basis, and then you say to, and even then you're going to say, what would society think? What would your parents think? What would friends think? And there are all of these conditionalities that go through your mind. So it's really difficult. You know, I think what this program does, it sensitizes everyone to the signs and symptoms of these conditions so that we can be more circumspect in the way that we evaluate our relationships with others, you know. But to be quite honest, most of us, when we get into our relationships, we didn't have this knowledge. So we just got into it. We got into a relationship with someone that looked nice, was pleasant, was very respectful of our parents, and you know, we went on like that. Actually, in some of the cases, the marriage might have been arranged, which is, have mercy, that's even more challenging for some individuals. So I think that one of the things that we should try to do in a program like this is to create a heightened awareness about some of the signs and symptoms we need to look at, you know, we need to look at as individuals. You know, looking for partners or in relationships, and know what are the risk factors, what are the red flags. When we see A or B and C, we say, oh, this is a bad sign, you know, so that we know what to do, you know, rather than wait till the situation gets really bad. So it's very difficult. I do empathize with individuals who find themselves in this situation. It's really a difficult ask, but hopefully someone will be able to, you know, get from our discourse some guidelines about how to go about monitoring relationships before they become marital ones.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Clark. Any words on resilience? We have a few minutes.
Yes, well, you know, the thing about emotional intelligence that I get excited about is basically that most of the conditions, the emotional, psychological conditions that we experience has to do with our cognition, our perspective on situations. Mm-hmm. And when we have a perspective on a situation, it informs the way we feel and it informs the way we act. Now, all of us have schemas, we have core beliefs that have been formed during our formative years, and all of that body of information informs the way we think. And you know, and so the core issue is, let's say, for instance, two of us look at the same situation. One appreciation of it, one you might see threatening, the other I don't see it as threatening. And what's happened is that we bring to life a database of information that we acquired during our formative years, our teenage years, how we were treated, the environment we lived in, our personal experiences, our disappointments, or abusive situation, whatever it is that happened to us, we bring all of that information with us, and it informs the way we think about life. It gives us a mindset about how we evaluate things, and therefore and once you start to think a certain way about a situation, it generates an emotional response within you before you even express it. Yeah. So you might get angry, or you might get anxious, or you might get sad, you know, the whole range of emotions. And then in the emotions then inform our behavior or actions. And what emotional intelligence does, it helps the individual to be able to recognize what's going on within them. It creates a certain sensitivity in the person, so that we say, okay, I'm getting upset about this. I'm unhappy with the way that this thing is now. I'm angry. So what do I do with my anger? What do I do with my anger? Because emotional intelligence is our ability to recognize and understand emotions in ourselves first and others. And then our ability to use that awareness to manage our behavior and our relationships. And it's tremendously important to realize that if we can manage our emotions, we can manage our feelings, we can regulate our feelings. And that has a tremendous impact on our behavior. So emotional intelligence has become one of the tremendous mediating factors in many, many conditions, many situations in life. And I think it's a powerful tool that we haven't, in some cases, haven't begun to tap into. I see emotional intelligence as advanced common sense, but then we know that common sense is not
common.
Not everybody has it, So it's a major challenge. So I see, and there's a strong relationship between emotional intelligence and resilience, because we look at a situation, we say, okay, I don't have control over the situation. So how do I approach the situation? All right, do I succumb, or do I realize that, all right, it's not going to last forever. And even if it lasts forever, I have the internal resources to deal with it. I don't need to fold up. And this is so very important in this COVID period, where emotional intelligence and resilience is absolutely critical. How do we deal with ourselves in this pandemic? Do we become panicky? We don't go out? What do we do? Do we feel hopeless and helpless? And what do we do? And that is all tied into the way that we perceive what's happening in our environment, the way we think about it. What measures do we use to alleviate our anxiety? All those things are connected to our emotional intelligence. Sorry about the fact that I lost connectivity, and I'm particularly sorry that I had to leave Leo to manage all of the questions, but that's life. That's life.
He was confident. Dr. Clark, would you recommend that emotional intelligence be taught in the everyday curriculum from primary school?
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. You might not believe this, but it's absolutely true. Do you know in the American institutions, it's part of the curriculum? Do you know that? And they teach it, and you can go online and check this out for yourself. They teach it to 4-year-olds right through. At the University of the Southern Caribbean, it's a course. It's a course. You have to do that course. It's really critical. And we have seminars, we have workshops, we have all kinds of things, emotional intelligence. I run a number of workshops for faculty, individuals working in the service sector.
You're breaking up a bit.
Indirect, and the students get frustrated. Sorry, I'm breaking.
You're breaking up a bit, yeah.
I am willing to come and do it for you for free.
Oh, oh,
You heard that bit?
awesome.
And do a workshop
We heard that.
for you.
Yeah.
Yes. No, you heard that bit.
Yes. Even though it was dragged out, we could get that. We got it loud and
Right.
clear. And we appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Dr. Clark, I mean, emotional intelligence is akin to critical thinking. And,
Yes.
you know, as a Muslim, when we study the early days of the Muslims and the scholars at that time in the 6th, 7th, the 8th, 10th, the 10th century, one of the subjects that every one of them used to study was logic. And basically it's about the same thing.
Yeah.
We didn't hear the comment, but
Well, I didn't know that I had to comment. I thought I was still listening for him to complete. Well, the difference though is that emotional intelligence is something that we can all practice. We can all practice. We don't have to. It is tied in with anger management, anxiety management, decision making, self-esteem, stress management. I mean, all of the critical areas of life is tied in to managing our emotions. When you manage your emotions, you're actually managing yourself. I don't know if you heard that. When you manage your management is critical for each and every one of us. And if we can self-regulate, we are way ahead of the game. We are significantly empowered when we can manage ourselves. It's the lack of self-management that creates all these things that we see in our contemporary society. It's individually cognitive behavioral therapy is closely aligned to emotional management and perspective thinking. You know, it's just such a powerful tool that we need to acquire, and it could bring about such happiness and meaningful living if we can just self-manage much better than we do.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Clark, I would like to invite you to do a full program on emotional intelligence sometime down the road.
Yes, yes.
So
Please.
I will call you and we'll arrange that for the benefit of the viewers.
Yes, please do it this year.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Within a month, we'll do it.
Okay. All right. Good.
Because as a preventative measure for mental health, that is exactly what we need.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Yes. And you know, you can, you know, it might sound fanciful for some persons, but if you go online, you can see how important emotional intelligence is in leadership. How it's important in all of our relationships, all our interpersonal relationships, all the intrapersonal states. So, you know, it's just so self-empowering that I think it should be part of our curriculum. I don't know how I'm going to get individuals who are aware of the importance of it would really agree that it's how it's about life and about living, and I will be only too pleased to do that for you.
I will be in touch.
Yeah.
Excellent. We're past time. We enjoy our discussion so much. I mean, we really appreciate you guys, the panelists, And we want to personally thank you for being with us during this wonderful mental health awareness program. So Hafiz, I'll hand over to you. Maybe we can get final comments from our panelists and then you can close. We appreciate you guys a whole lot.
So here, you could start with your final comments.
Yes, Brother Hafiz, yes. I love this discussion on emotional intelligence, and my final comments are just a suggestion. First of all, I thank you for having me on the program. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I'm very humbled. We associated a lot with mindfulness in our society here in the U.S., and we've had programs on mindfulness and parenting, which have been very successful because they've had parents sit and just think about, be self-aware and about themselves, their children, their surroundings, their actions. And so just like Dr. Clark said, yes, there's courses here. It's part of the curriculum. We need to be really knowledgeable about it to understand our clients as well and ourselves and how that interacts, how that relationship interacts. So I wanted to just say that comment. And again, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely enjoyed being part of your program. Thank you so much.
And I can tell you, you'll be continue to be part of our programs.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd absolutely be humbled, and it's a pleasure to be. Thank you so much.
Leo, go ahead.
All right. Again, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel and this program on a whole. I believe when I studied my bachelor's, I was one of the lab rats for implementing emotional intelligence as a part of the School of Social Sciences in the University of Teesside. So
Amen.
I am, in the UK. I'm always excited to hear anybody talk about emotional intelligence.
Yes, yes.
For the simple fact that for myself, it went a long way into helping me to understand my learning style. So I was actually able to be a better student through emotional intelligence, and seeing it trickle down into all aspects of life from that point onward. I believe it's something that should be incorporated into our curriculum, because it's going to enable so many students to go so much further.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, the importance of mental health cannot be stressed enough. The mentality that it is only when you are ill that you are required to get checked or get help is something that we need to step away from. We need to treat mental health in the same way that we treat our physical health, taking proactive measures before things go wrong. In fact, proactive measures can help prevent things from going wrong. When we were in discussion earlier about some of the things that we can do in the long run to help stave off dementia, Alzheimer's, and other such brain diseases, I didn't get a chance to talk about stress and the importance of stress management. We are a culture that thrives on stress. We are always on the go. We're always hustling. We're always bustling. And you see that now, as you said, in retirement, where people have no plan and no idea what to do. They say, I'll take it easy when I retire. They retire and then grieve themselves internally grave because I don't know what to do with myself. But stress affects the brain in ways that we aren't fully aware of in our youth. And we don't notice the damage until it is too late to self-correct. So starting with proper stress management techniques from now can save us a lot of headache. It's not only going to help save our mental health, it's also going to save your physical health in the long run. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, Leo, and I took note of your enchantment with emotional intelligence. So I'll invite you to the discussion also.
Really appreciate it.
Professor Clark.
Yes,
Don't tell me fate has it that they didn't want to hear anything.
Program yesterday as a sole speaker for like 4 hours, talking about breaking the chain of depression. And it was one of the things that I noted, and I cited your program in that discussion, is that I think that faith-based institutions need to step up and take on the responsibility to creating awareness on mental health in their respective communities. We cannot leave it to government entities to do that. We have a responsibility to make our adherents or followers or supporters or believers more understanding about mental health. It's in the backwaters. It just doesn't have the prominence that it should. And if we can work through our respective faith-based institutions, and we can preach it, inverted commas, more and talk about it, we would have done tremendously well for our participants. So I do applaud you all sincerely for the efforts that you have made, and I know that I have actually tried to get. Yesterday, I was trying to create that awareness among our organization. Mental health is just so very, very important. And my mantra is there's no health except mental health. I don't care how healthy you are physically. If you're not mentally healthy, you're not going to make it. You're definitely not going to have a pleasant, enjoyable, meaningful life. So that's the first thing. I am very committed to assisting in disseminating the information about the importance of mental health. And I thank you all for inviting me on the program. It has been difficult in terms of time, but it was something I felt strongly about, and if I gave my commitment, and I will continue to support your efforts in whatever way I can in creating awareness among our fellow citizens about the healthy mental health status that we are aiming to achieve throughout our life. So thank you, and may the continuing grace of Allah be with you.
Thank you very much, all of you. Again, thank you very much in terms of not only those who are here today, but all those who were on the other programs also. This program would not have been able to be successful without the input of the professionals in the field. I would like to also thank my co-host, Michelle, who is also a professional in the field and who did a tremendous job in handling all the different questions. Of course, having a good understanding of the subject would have helped in that area. I would also like to thank the technical persons behind the whole scene. We had Junaid from Family TV, and we have Wahida from FISCAL, who is behind a computer administering the whole Zoom situation. So it's not something that you just see on TV and everything is fine. There are people who are behind who are equally important in building this awareness. Let me just again remind that the series would be available on Facebook continuously, and keep spreading it, keep sharing it to others, because I think everybody in the country needs to become aware of this, as Dr. Clark and viewers is pointing out. It's vital for the development of the country as a whole, moving forward. And we would be having that that discussion on emotional intelligence soon, because I myself think that is very important. I think we should have it in the curriculum, and I can't understand with all the education experts we have within the Ministry of Education how it is that they haven't done that as yet. So once again, thank you all very much, and of course, thanks for those who joined us, or the viewers. We hope we have been able to help you clarify any misconceptions and build new awareness of the understanding of mental health. So continue, like our Facebook page so that you will be notified of any programs that we are having in the area of family development in the future, so that you could take part and become more aware and know what kind of help how we could help develop a better family. Thank you all very much, and see you all soon.